So today we have another interview for Final Fantasy VII, this one again with Cody Christian, who is the voice behind Cloud Strife in Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, and in this one he got to sit down with Deadline to talk about his first time jitters voicing Cloud in Remake, and he also gets to talk about that really unhinged scene where Cloud is stalking Aerith at the Temple of the Ancients. So we've covered a few different interviews in the past here on the channel with Cody Christian, so I'll try my best not to repeat myself since there is some overlap with his answers, but I always appreciate these interviews in general, but Cody's in particular. He's this incredibly introspective person, and you can tell that he really thinks about this stuff before he says something. His answers are always really well thought out and eloquent, and you can tell that he loves this character and wants to do the best that he can to portray him in a way that we all, as fans, are familiar with but also love. And I do have to say, first and foremost, everyone in this game has given an incredible performance, especially on the main cast. And I don't know what's going to happen at this year's Game Awards when it comes to like Game of the Year nominations, but I'm really hoping somebody from this cast gets a nomination for Best Performance because everyone just knocked it out of the park. So I'm hoping somebody from this cast gets some sort of recognition, whether they win or not, because everyone is so deserving of it. But getting to the interview, Cody talks about the first time he got cast as Cloud and how he kind of doesn't remember much of it because he was so nervous. Cody says, "So my first batch of recording, I feel like I blacked out because I went into thinking like, fuck, I really hope I don't mess this up, and I hope I don't get fired, because they're expecting a professional, and obviously I can pretend to be that as much as possible, but this is my first gig. I had an amazing camp of people that walked me through everything. I credit this man all the time, and I really want to give him his flowers. My main voice director, Kirk Thornton, from the first and second games, is a veteran voice actor and transitioned into directing. There was trust, comfortability, and respect amongst the two of us from the very beginning, and rather than him using his seniority and position to make me feel inadequate, it was quite the opposite. He was Team Final Fantasy, Team Cloud, and anything and everything that I needed, whether it was just technical pointers on being able to get everything on mic, or using the diaphragm to bring intensity into moments, or even little things like eating green apples to get rid of the little tongue clicks and sticky stuff that you hear on the mic that you don't realize until you hear it." I can completely relate to Cody about blacking out. I took 2 years of acting classes in high school. I remember my first big performance in front of like 100 plus people. I don't remember a damn thing about that performance, but I was told that I was really good and I gave a great performance, so I guess that's reassuring. But as Cody says, you know, he's so used to on-camera acting, and for this being his first voice gig, much like Brianna White, who is the voice of Aerith, you honestly could not tell by the end of Remake. They sounded like seasoned professionals. And a lot of that is not only great writing and them being good actors, but you really need a great voice direction team and sound engineers around you to help bring out those performances. And I'm really happy that he mentioned this process, because if you look at previous behind the scenes footage for the previous cast of these characters for Advent Children, it sounded like a completely different process. And Steve Burton and George Newbern were doing a Comic-Con panel, I believe last year, where they talked about getting cast in these roles. And they were the previous roles for Cloud and Sephiroth. And Steve Burton in particular was super excited because at the time he was playing a soap opera character that was super boring. This guy had nothing going for him, no character development, no personality. So when he got the role of Cloud, he was excited because he felt like for the first time he was going to get to portray a character, someone who had attitude and depth to them. And he and George Newbern, when they stepped into the booth, were given the same direction from that voice team of saying, we need you guys to be as emotionless and monotone as possible. And both of them were shocked. Like, hang on a second. We're playing these really awesome characters and you want us to be boring? And it turns out back then, it really seems like Square Enix in the voice direction team, they didn't really care about performance. They just wanted to make sure the English dialogue matched the Japanese lip sync, because Advent Children had already been created and had its lip animation done in Japanese. So they needed the cadence and the speed of these lines to match the lip dub instead of them giving a good performance. So it sounds like back then it may have been a more frustrating experience for those actors, even though they still, speak very fondly of it. But it really seems like Square Enix has turned a corner when it comes to directing their actors and just setting up a system that ensures that they succeed. So that's really nice to hear. So with that first experience being really kind of nerve-wracking, Cody talks about recording for Rebirth and how it was a complete 180. Cody says, the second game was a very different experience. experience. I was genuinely excited to get back into the booth and step into Cloud's shoes again. I knew story-wise where we started in the first, what was going to happen to the character, and where we would leave him and lead him during the second. Rebirth sees Cloud brought to life in such a sympathetic way as he goes through this emotional journey and explores his vulnerability, opening him up as a book. The second game was a special experience, and I believe I am correct in my optimism, but I believe the third will be even better, because now I can finally breathe and enjoy what I'm doing and not feel like a clown or imposter. Because I'll be real with you, it was a lot of that in the beginning. I knew how much this game meant to people. It was never lost on me. So I knew I was going to do my absolute best, but I was kind of holding my breath and crossing my fingers because obviously it's like you could do your best, but you're not going to please everybody. So seeing the success of the first geared me up and made me 10 times more excited for the second. And much like I mentioned in the Brianna video, you can hear the growth of these actors from Remake to Rebirth. They sound more confident. They sound even more experienced. And for Cody to play such a guarded version of Cloud in Remake that only lets that guard slip every once in a while to what we see in Rebirth, where he's still guarded, but he's so much more willing to open up and poke fun at the people around him and crack jokes and even kind of smile and bring levity to certain things. And one of the greatest examples of that is the scene between Cloud and Tifa in Gungaga, where Cloud just opens up to Tifa and he straight up says, like, sometimes I don't even know who I am. And moments like that are so big for the character of Cloud because he is so guarded. And when you can kind of chip away at those little bits and see the real Cloud underneath, it's a really beautiful thing. And his performances in Remake and Rebirth were fantastic, but I think he's probably going to give his best performance in part 3 because he's going to get to play this version of Cloud that has everything come crashing down, he becomes comatose, and then it's up to Tifa to help him piece together who he really is. And then he's going to become the Cloud that we all know and love and are familiar with. A Cloud that is free of Sephiroth and Genova influence, a Cloud that is willing to be open and vulnerable in himself and work through that trauma that he's experienced. You know, the whole line of "Let's Mosey" is who Cloud is. He's a goofball. He's this nerd who would think that, yeah, saying "Let's Mosey" is cool. That's just who Cloud is at the core. So getting to hear that performance of Cloud with Cody, I think is going to be something super special. Up next, Cody describes playing Cloud in a way that I've never really thought of before that I thought was super interesting. And he goes on to say, "The way I look at Cloud is he's very much a product of his environment. He didn't just pop out being this moody, broody, guarded, badass soldier who doesn't seem to care about anyone or anything outside of himself. That's all a result of trauma. If we start at the end result of what we know Cloud is known for, the joy that I've had has been doing the work in reverse, figuring out how we get there and finding these pure moments of who this guy is. And who he is, in my opinion, is this goofy, lovable, loyal, wannabe soldier that turns into all of those things for real." And I really like that description of working on Cloud in reverse, because when we see Cloud, obviously he is that guarded soldier with that faux persona built upon trauma, and getting to work in reverse to reveal the real Cloud is actually really brilliant. So we all know that process, but to actually speak it out and read it, I thought it was just incredibly interesting. And for Cloud to put up this faux persona, even though those elements of who he really is still shine through from time to time, getting to break all that down and letting everything shine through so Cloud can become himself is just such a cathartic moment in the original game. Up next, Cody gives some insight on what it was like to record that really uncomfortable, unhinged scene where Cloud essentially stalks Aerith at the Temple of the Ancients like he's Jason frickin' Voorhees. Cody says, "That scene with Aerith was by far my favorite out of everything just because of the performance. That sinister side of Cloud doesn't really exist. We hadn't really seen it, and to bring that level of sinister and something that is so out of pocket, so out of character for him, which is obviously what the scene called for. It's not him. He's being controlled. His mind is in different places. But to be able to take it there is almost like a guilty pleasure because the audience knows it's not right for Cloud to be that way. And especially towards the people he's acting that way towards, Aerith, Tifa, etc. So I felt wrong doing that voice." He laughs, and I think that's what made it so exciting because in the whole scope of the story, Cloud never really goes that far. And even when he does things that may not seem right, they're justified in his heart and soul. And I would say that he makes the right decision. But we don't ever get to see him not in control or unhinged, and he's truly unhinged. We get glimpses of it. When he gets his little mind attacks and his flashbacks, we see glimpses, but we never really get to see him him completely not in control. And for me, that was the most fun because I just got to take it to a place I didn't think I would ever be able to. And I remember I had to do take after take of these ominous, sinister laughs, this just deranged lunatic style, and it was so fun. I would do maybe 15, 20, and I was really getting into it. That was fun. Now, that sequence is completely different in the original. In the OG FF7, Cloud loses control and he attacks Aerith. It's really kind of uncomfortable, but also kind of goofy because the graphics and sound effects back then, weren't super realistic. So it's like he's attacking Aerith. He's literally beating her up. So I'm kind of happy they changed that for Rebirth. I think with the realistic graphics, it would have been maybe too jarring to see Cloud just straight up attack Aerith. So for them to pull back on that and instead go full force with this unhinged Cloud who is not in control, who is just stalking Aerith like he's freaking Freddy Krueger, like he's ominously laughing. He's toying with Aerith. And again, that's not Cloud. He's being controlled by, Sephiroth at that point. And it's almost like Sephiroth is playing with his food and scaring Aerith, but through Cloud. And he knows how much psychological damage that's going to do, not just to Cloud, but to Aerith. Because Sephiroth, again, is a master manipulator. This guy is gross. He's so dark and twisted and cruel that doing something like this, it's fun to him. And to control Cloud in that moment where you're just kind of limping along, it's like, I don't want to be doing this, man. I don't want to treat Aerith like this and stalk her and have Cloud catch up to her and do who knows what. But Cody's performance, again, it just comes out of left field. You're not expecting him to deliver that unhinged performance. And he just sounds so creepy and does a great job of making the audience feel uncomfortable. And every time that happens to Cloud in the game, like when he attacks Tifa in the Gungaga reactor, when he almost takes out Alina, those are really scary moments because you can see, like, even though it's a video game, you can see Cloud's eyes just disappear kind of. They're blank. They're like Michael Myers' eyes, the blackest eyes. There's nothing there, but he's being manipulated. And those are some really scary moments. Now, speaking of unhinged moments, Cody finally opens up about the scene where he transforms into a Moogle and only delivers the line of Kupo. Cody says, I think the most challenging was the Moogle bit for two reasons. One, I can only say one word now, Kupo, and just the circumstances. I don't care how you look at it, they're extremely goofy. Going into work, we're doing serious shit beforehand, and then they're like, all right, we're going to do this sequence. And I'm like, all right, cool. Well, what is it? And they start giving me all the information. Then I saw the script in front of me on a little monitor, and I'm looking at 30 lines, and it's all one word, and I'm like, did you guys fuck up? Is this a mistake? He laughs. And they go, no, this is all you can say. It was so ridiculously funny because I had to do a different emotional inflection on every line. So I'm just saying the same thing over and over, and by the time we're done, we have to go back and listen to me saying this one word and being like, all right, do you feel the joy in that one? Okay, yeah, but it sounds too similar to the one where he's supposed to be annoyed. All right, well, let's change the annoyed one a little bit. So it was a very meticulous process, and it was just hard to take seriously because it's not a joke, but for me, in the real-time reality of doing it, I felt so silly. Cody then goes on to talk a little bit more about the Loveless performance where he's delivering like this super robotic Shakespearean dialogue because Cloud obviously is this very kind of robotic character at times, and he talked about how he got very animated in the booth, doing poses, acting like he was doing real Shakespeare. And I, again, can relate to that because I talk with my hands a lot. If you guys could see me when I'm making these videos, you would think I was clinically insane. And I'm surprised I haven't smashed the crap out of my microphone because I talk with my hands so much. But going back to that Moogle performance, it's one of the most unhinged things in that game. And to see Cloud transform into those really kind of not very cute, unsettling designs for the Moogle, and all he can say is Kupo, is just one of the funniest moments in that game to me. And he does, again, a great job of differentiating between the different Kupos. And it kind of takes me back to the scene where Cloud and Tifa become frogs and all they can say is ribbit. You can hear the dissatisfaction in Cloud's voice when he goes, ribbit. Like, God damn it, I'm a frog again. I don't want to do this shit. So having to deliver those different lines with the different inflections, again, really goes to show just how good of an actor Cody is, but also how great that team behind him is to give him that proper voice direction and not just George Lucas it and say like, yeah, that was fine, let's move on to the next thing. It's so vital to these performances. And personally, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive those little baby kid Moogles for attacking me and making me chase them. I kind of hope that game doesn't return in Remake Part 3. And then to end the interview, we'll talk about Cody and his stomach making an appearance in the voice booth. Cody says, you know what's the worst? You know those growling sounds that your stomach will do, and you can't even control that shit? Obviously, it's not anyone's fault, and you can't do anything about it, but when you're trying to do lines and then all you hear is just this demonic growing, gurgling sound, it's just so off-putting. It's something that never needs to be heard directly. Again, I can relate. We all have those moments when we record these types of videos where we're trying to get the sound just right. Maybe you mess up a line, you hear those sticky things in your mouth like I can hear right now. Your stomach is rumbling. It's just such a weird process to speak into a microphone, but the team over at Square Enix does such an incredible job. And again, as an actor, you have to be very careful because these audio files have to be super high quality, which Cody does stress in this interview. You have to make sure there's no extra sounds. It sounds good because this audio is going to get compressed over and over and over again and have modifications depending on the environment for the character. So it's a lot of work to make sure that audio comes out good. But with that being said, that is the video. I am curious, Corduroy, let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this Deadline article. Again, I will leave the link to this article in the description if you'd like to read the whole thing, because we didn't cover every aspect of it. But I just really enjoy reading these interviews, especially with Cody. He gives some really great answers. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of Cody's performance in Remake and Rebirth. I ask that you keep it civil because unfortunately when I saw this article posted online, there was some really just toxic Final Fantasy fans leaving stupid comments in regards to Cody in the game, and that's just so dumb and uncalled for. And you know, I don't tolerate that stuff here on my channel, so if you're gonna leave stuff like that, it's gonna get removed. I'm not trying to sanitize the environment. I want people to be able to give their opinions, but you gotta give that stuff in a constructive way. You know, if you didn't like his performance, let me know in a constructive way. It's pretty simple. But I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.